So, was welcome tape for the Oric-1 the first software that you had to prepare, or was it everything at once? And
that's probably a fair guess that was perhaps the first proper commission to do. But I think things were a bit haphazard, so I think I probably was working on various ideas at the same time.
yeah,
But the welcome to Oric, I think, was me learning how to do things as well, and trying out the different effects, and then thinking this would look good, and then I think Paul had some ideas and suggestions of what that needed to do in terms of, obviously, to demonstrate the basic commands that would do circles and lines, and to do the various colors and so on, and then to show the text modes and the high res mode, and to demonstrate the audio and so on. But I don't think it was a particularly long project, so it was probably done within a few weeks.
yeah, because he had to be ready for
It had to be ready for the release. Yeah,
for the release, and at the time, it was a great computer. I mean, there was high resolution graphics, colors, the sound was very nice. And all of this for a price, very interesting price. And the success of computers depends on a lot of things, but it depends also on the context. And in France, the context was ideal for the Oric, because at the time when he arrived, there was almost no competitor for this price and these features. And that explains why it worked very well in France. It was very important for a lot of people in France, and most of the programmers which work in video games now, the people who made the big companies that still exist today, began on the Oric. Even for the video game companies in France, the Oric means something.
Yes. I wasn't aware to begin with that the Oric was so popular in France. And then one day, out of nowhere, a man from France turned up at my door to talk about the Oric. I'm afraid I can't remember his name, but he did not speak much English, and I did not speak much French. So we had this half French, half English conversation, and then I showed him some things I was working on and so on.
He knew that it was you that programmed a lot of early software for the Oric.
Yes. And I suppose he looked me up in the phone book or something.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's very strange.
So in 1983, you had a lot of work, because I noted some of the software you made. There was a welcome tape. I found some games in the Oric Owner magazine, a newsletter.
Yes.
There was...
Yeah, so Paul wanted some, obviously he was trying to fill the Oric magazine, so I tried to write a few articles in there, how to program the Oric and so on.
So you were writing books, programming software for Tansoft, sending papers for the Gazette. So it was a full-time job in 1983.
Very busy. Yes. I didn't get much sleep.
Yeah,
it was a very busy time.
But exciting.
Very interesting time. Yes, it was nice to be at the forefront, be at the front of doing this. But I'd say at this time and a little earlier, people who had computers, we just didn't know what we could do. There was an unknown. You just think, what could you really do with this machine? Especially with the Oric, you had 48K, and older machines only having 8K or 4K or 1K.
Yeah,
this is quite a lot of memory. It was like, we can actually do some really interesting things with this. So there's a kind of an unknown, of what we were going to be able to do with computers then and in the future. It was a really interesting time.
Were you aware that it would be distributed to a lot of people around the world? I mean, at least in Europe, that a lot of people would play your programs.
I'd hoped that they would stuff because to begin with, I was being paid royalties.
Yeah.
So I was paid like a 10% royalty. So unfortunately, there was only a very short time when the software sold well. So I didn't become very rich. But part of me, I've always wanted to do things for the sake of doing them. You have to earn a living, but I often just do things because I want to do them. But some of the royalty numbers were quite high to begin with, so I was aware that there were thousands or tens of thousands of people out there playing the games and so on, and that was nice. That was a nice feeling.
Do you remember which games were the most interesting for you in terms of royalties?
I think I'm slightly embarrassed to say, but I think Oric Flight.
Oric Flight. Oh yeah, yeah.
Which I'm probably the least proud of. Probably earned the most royalties.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's an inverse maybe of the software I'm most proud of. Gave the least amount of money.
Which one? Sorry, I didn't.
Maybe Trouble in Store or Megabase, later software.
Yeah.
Which, to be frank, I didn't earn any money out of. As I say, it's you do it because you want to do it and you want to make it the best you can. It isn't really about the money, but you have to make a living. I think the most tedious one to do was the language course.
Oh yeah,
and that was going back to school.
Yeah, and
being back at school.
And there were several of them: French, German, Italian.
I think there was 4 of them, wasn't there?
Yeah, Spanish. Yeah, 4 of them. It seems a lot of work.
It was a lot. It was a lot of typing.
Yeah.
And what was his name? He came round to my house and he had these stacks of papers. Oh God, what have I got into here? And that was just like a fixed fee job, for Tansoft to do that. And it was just an awful lot of typing, and you have to keep checking, and you aren't just typing, but you've got to format it as well.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, but I think there was kind of a whole layout thing for each page. It was like, was it the only one I remember is gato, the Spanish for cat is gato. Imagine a cat eating a large gato.
Yeah, because it's for those watching us who don't know, I would put some screenshot, and I was going to say gameplay. It's not really a game, so it's a tool to learn languages, and there are questions. Like a quiz, in fact, sometimes, no? About the...
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a memory associative idea. So you associate an absurd image, like a cat eating a cake, and you remember that's a gato.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember any other examples. But, that was an odd one to do.
And in Tansoft, there were several programmers, or was it basically only you? And
I think all the programmers worked in their own houses, away from the office. Tansoft moved from Tangerine were at the bottom of Four Hill in Ely. Maybe this is too much detail. And Tansoft moved to the centre, just up the hill. They were at Club Muse, so you probably know the address from the adverts. They were at Club Muse in Ely. And that was a very old, hundreds of years old, these buildings were in Ely. Very old buildings. And it was kind of a cramped space, I remember, upstairs. It was above the shops. And I think they were there for a while. I don't think they had enough space for programmers to actually work there. So I just remember there being, stacks of product to sell, and
okay. So you worked mostly at home.
Yes, I would have gone up there every few weeks maybe to catch up, to speak to Paul and Kathy, who worked there, Kathy Barr and Paul Kaufman, and I think they were going in every day. I think by that time Paul had moved to Ely, and Kathy lived in Ely, and so you would sort of work from home and then go up every few weeks and show them progress on things, or talk about new ideas.
But you were very free to do whatever you fancy, no? about programming,
Yes,
about the games?
I think I was, but I think Paul also would have given me ideas and also they would have been,
Directions.
things to do, particular things to do. As I said, like, things like the Oric-1, it'd be like, well, I don't remember exactly what happened, but maybe it was like, here's a half-finished program. Can you fix the bugs, make it work?
Because you, like you told me a bit earlier, some of the programs or the games were made half by you, half by someone else who started the project, or you helped them.
Yeah, I think that's my memory, is that they'd been sent a game which sort of almost works, but the original programmer wasn't interested in finishing them. This kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's quite a common thing in programming, and you probably know this yourself. It's very easy to start a program or a game, and it's very difficult to finish it.
And do you remember the chess games? There is chess and chess 2.
They've merged together as to one. I only remember there being one chess game, but maybe there were two. I don't know why there would be two chess programs. I remember we added speech.
Yeah, it's a chess. It's a chess 2 version with the speach.
Yes,
and
it's me shouting into a microphone and
yeah, it's funny because I just read very quickly your book about the Oric, and there is some lines about speech synthesis in the book, and you used it. I mean, you put some speech in the chess program, the second version. Yeah,
I think it's in Trouble in Store as well. I think it says Harrods at the start, which was the original working title for the game.
Oh yeah,
and I think that's what we were going to call it at Tansoft. Orpheus was formed, and that became Trouble in Store. I don't know how effective the speech is. It's probably not very good, really. No.
So Trouble in Store is one of your most
it's one of the better known ones, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a really nice game in machine code and a platform type game.
Yeah,
and with a special jump.
I always tried in all the later software I've done to make the control as good as possible. For instance, I did Mighty Bomb Jack on the Commodore 64, and I'm pleased to see in reviews of that, people comment on how it's responsive. You go with where you want to go, whereas on other versions,
because
it's not good.
because in Trouble in Store, when you jump, you can cling to the
grasp on,
and jump again, and it's very free movements, and it's very nice.
Yeah. Thank you. I think you learn over time, and I think 3 or 4 years later, I would have probably done everything differently.
Yeah, of course.
Because you're learning all the time. You're learning your trade, but you have to live in the moment. And when the game is needed, you write it. Like Oric Munch, I wouldn't have written anything like that a couple of years later. Look at it, and I think I wish I hadn't done it like that. You have to, you have a deadline. You have to write the code.
What's the story behind Oric Munch? Is it did Paul say you must do a Pac-Man clone for the Oric at all cost?
I think we probably talked about what arcade games were out there and what ones might be possible to do. I think a Pac-Man type of game lends itself quite nicely on the Oric, doesn't it? Because you can do it on a square basis with the attributes, and it doesn't have to be absolutely pixel smooth, which of course you'd want to do nowadays. You'd want it to be very smooth. But that was I think that was in assembler, wasn't it? That was in machine language.
Yeah. No, it's not bad. Oric Munch is quite nice, in fact.
I think I tried to make it fun, but I think I wouldn't have quite made it the same way.
Well, it's playable. You can have fun with this even today.
Yeah. That's as long as you can have fun with something, then you've succeeded. I think is the bottom line.
And you were talking about Oric Flight, and It's funny because in France it was also released by Logiciel, which was so I don't know if it was a legal release. They asked you.
Was it the same program though, or was it not someone else? Someone else's?
No. It was Oric Flight. It was called something else in France.
Well, it doesn't matter. I was conscious that it wasn't really much of a game, so I added a lot of humor in there. So there's some crazy things in there, like you could fly too high, you'd end up on the moon or something, wouldn't you? So I tried to make it.
But there is a nice animation too when you crash.
Yes.
It's a bit fun.
Yeah.
Because at the time, because I explored a lot of early games on early computers, and at the time, and the end of the 70s and beginning of the 80s, this kind of games were quite popular. Now, like the first flight simulators, like you have to check all the instruments, and this was a kind of game like this. I don't know where you got the inspiration.
Well, what actually happened, and I forget the detail of this, but I had a bit of code from somewhere which had all the maths.
Yeah.
Which had all the formula for how the movement would go. So underneath it all, there was some valid physics.
Yeah.
Even though it's a slightly foolish kind of game, there is some valid Newtonian motion going on in there. I can't remember now where I found this, but there were a few lines of code or maths that I found somewhere, and I built it around that.
Yeah, but that's what I thought, because it's kind of program you find often flight by instruments, and so it felt like the base of your program is inspired by that.
Yes. I think there is this sort of a fundamental core in there, which is a valid part of the flight, experience, the movement through space. But unfortunately, the same problem as some of the other games. It was written mostly in BASIC, and then a few bits of assembler in there, I think, to do the landing.
Yeah,
I think, and this is the problem. That at the time, I wasn't experienced enough in assembler, and nor had enough time, because assembly language does take a lot longer to write code than BASIC.
Yeah,
this is always the trouble.
Yeah, and at the time when you wanted a program or a game for your computer, I live in Bordeaux in France, and I had an Oric-1 and then an Atmos, and if I wanted to buy a game, I had to go in town, and I was a teenager, so it was a whole story to go there and find a computer shop and to pray that they had, 5 or 10 games maybe for the Oric. And then when you saw the tapes, there were no screenshots, only the inlay, the picture. And so it was your imagination, that made the trick. And when you see something like Oric Flight, wow, with a picture of a plane, you say, well, I buy that, and I will try to fly with my Oric.
Then you were horribly disappointed when you see the.
Well, at the time it was like this. Huh?
Yeah, and you have to do it in your imagination.
Yeah. Among the games that you wrote, there are several adventure games for the Microtan. And
I was very interested in the genre.
Yeah.
I think what happened is a couple of things happened. First of all, at work, we had PDP-11 machines.
Oh, yeah.
PDP-11. And we had the original Zork on there.
Oh,
I'm sure you know Zork.
Yeah.
That later became Zork 1, 2, and 3. But it was one big game called Dungeon originally. And then they split it up into Zork 1, 2, 3. So at work, I was, when I found this was there, I was heavily addicted to playing this until I'd solved it over, many weeks.
Yeah.
So me and a couple of other people who worked there would go up after work and spend an hour on there. So I was interested in how that worked. And so when the opportunity came along, I wanted to obviously write adventure games. And then that led to obviously Zodiac and then House of Death. So I sort of tried to throw a lot of humor in there. Because there are a lot of adventure games around, text adventure.
Yeah.
And I think the market became heavily saturated, didn't it, with adventure games, text adventure games.
Yes, but that was nice. And Zodiac and Haunted House, you put some audio effects in it, and which was a plus for this type of games.
Yes. I tried to add a lot of detail in there. After about the time that we'd stopped writing programs for the Oric, I had actually written an assembly language text adventure engine, but it never saw the light of day because there wasn't the time. I had to work on other machines then.
Yeah.
Sadly, it's a pity that the time the Oric was around wasn't longer. Let's say viable.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to make out that everything's all about money, but that Orpheus was at times struggling to make money, and we obviously had to concentrate on programs that would definitely sell. That's the sad thing.
But for the adventure games, do you have memories about spending a lot of time writing the story, preparing all the maze and chambers?
Yeah, I think I probably mapped ideas out in a notebook. Zodiac was inspired by an English TV program called Catweasel.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of.
No.
But the second series of Catweasel is about a man from Norman times who comes into the 20th century. In the second series of that, he's trying to find signs of the zodiac. So I think I had that in my memory.
Oh, okay.
To base around the idea of collecting signs of the zodiac. So I think that's where that comes from.
And I sent you a link of Casa, a website, where there is a lot of solutions for classic adventure games, and there are solutions for the game you wrote, most of them. And last week I played House of Death with the solution, and to advance. And even with the solution, it's very time consuming. It took me like 1 hour, to
yes. Well, that is the idea, is to make it something that you've got to, it's a sequence, isn't it? You've got to do this, and then you've got to do that. I think what I always tried to do was make it a bit more understanding, a bit more AI.
Yeah.
Because a lot of adventure games that were around were very picky. Even the big names, the big main adventure games had a very specific thing. You get this, use that, and it would only understand one way of saying it. So I tried to think what somebody would type, and then tried to make it understand what you would have typed. I don't know whether I was successful there, but so you could type in a different way and it would still work. And it must be especially hard for you if you're not English to play an English game.
Yeah, hopefully I had a solution for this one. I didn't have this game when I was young. But it's funny, there is an anecdote about this one, is that when I tried to play it, I read that there was a bug in the game. And when you reach the end, almost the end, when you're in a crypt and you organized the different exits of each spot by data, with numbers in data statements, and there was one missing. And in the crypt at one time, you couldn't leave the room. So there is a fan who modified the program and put it online so people can finish the game.
Oh, that's terrible. So I apologize for that time.
Yeah, it's crazy because I don't know if you heard about someone finishing the haunted house, the House of Death. Sorry.
House of Death.
Yeah, because it seems like it was impossible at the time.
Well, that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, almost all other games that aren't adventure games, you can never beat, can you? Because
No.
they're designed to get harder and harder,
Yeah.
faster
Mhm.
and faster,
Yeah.
or harder and harder. But
But
no, that is a shame.
adventure games, that was very incredible, because when I was young, so a friend of mine had an Oric before I had mine. I was very young, and each time I went there, they put some games, and I was playing like action games. And one day they said, "Oh, we have a new game." And they loaded the game, and it was Le Manoir du Docteur Genius. It was a French adventure game. And my brain exploded, because we loaded the game and the computer was saying, "Okay, now what do you want to do?" And when you don't have any idea how is it programmed underneath, it's like amazing. You think that the computer is really thinking by itself.
Yes,
It was crazy. It was
yes. I know what you mean, and I loved adventure games too. And I bought all the Infocom games. Do you know all those?
Yeah.
There's like one with the bureaucracy and there was all sorts, weren't there? There was the detective ones. I even bought the Invisi-Clues. Did you know about those?
No.
They used to sell hint books to give you a hint
Oh yeah.
on how to solve them, and they would have a special pen. So you rub off the first line, and it would give you one clue. It would say, "Have you looked under the mantelpiece, or have you seen this?" And then if you're still stuck, you run the pen on the next line, and it gives you another clue.
Incredible. Excellent.
Fantastic. I love those games.
Yeah. I was very interested in the early years, like we talked about for a moment. And then after, where there is the Orpheus story, where you went there after Tansoft, but it didn't last long.
It had troubles. The Oric side of it. So there was kind of a bit of a troubled time when Paul left Tansoft, and I left. I followed him in a way, because I think Tansoft was struggling at that time. They wanted Trouble in Store, because that was originally going to be a Tansoft game, and then we set up Orpheus, and that therefore carried along to Orpheus as one of their products. I don't know the detail, but I think they couldn't get the games into shops anymore. So I think it was now 1984, maybe late 1984. And I think maybe the Oric was dying a death a bit because of the competition. Shops were concentrating on Commodore 64, Spectrum, Amstrad, and a few others, MSX, and so on. And I think the trouble was we couldn't get Oric product into the shops.
Yeah, it was a beginning of the end for
the beginning of the end. Yeah. And Orpheus was a very new company. We didn't have a lot of money in the company, so we had to fight to survive. So we were concentrating on other games, like the young ones and so on. There's the Electrosound 64 was that Tansoft. I don't know, but so I think Orpheus had trouble from the word go for different reasons. Probably didn't have enough money in it to really produce a lot of different games and be successful. Maybe by one or two of them being very popular. I think we were probably quite unlucky, and I would have liked to have carried on doing more Oric games at Orpheus, because I enjoyed doing them. But I have to do obviously what needs to be done to bring in money.
What the market wanted.
Yeah.
So you began Yes, sorry. You went on doing conversions for most popular.
So I think I did MSX conversions for quite a while. I don't quite know how that came about, but maybe somebody phoned up and said, "Can you program this for us?" And so they got me an MSX, and I learned how to program that. And we did a few successful conversions on there, Boulder Dash and Boulder Dash. I think we did Boulder Dash 2 and Spy versus Spy. And our own game was Elidon, which we'd done on the Commodore 64, which was John Marshall's game.
Okay.
And I think those did quite well. And then we did the young ones. And that was our downfall at Orpheus because of the bugs and the lateness of it. So I think I've spoken about elsewhere. It was a bit of a sad time, really.
And for the conversions, did you have help? Did they send you the maps of the levels, the original code, or for Boulder Dash, for example?
Often doing I did a lot of conversions in the 1980s, and quite often you'd get nothing at all. Here's an example of something I did, which was Mighty Bomb Jack on the Commodore 64.
Yes.
And what they gave us was a hex dump of the code and the data on paper, and a video showing the game being played because it was an arcade game. So I had a videotape of the game going from level 1 up to the end. That was quite typical.
So you had everything to do, the graphics, the stats all over.
Well, we at that time there was a graphics guy who who worked out the graphics. I think what happened is the guy I was working with, Roger, said, "We've got this hex dump, but I've worked this bit out," and he's already sort of worked out some of where the graphics were, where the start of the maps were, just by looking at the hex code. But that's crazy. The sort of thing you did back then.
Crazy.
You worked it out. I think the Boulder Dash and Spy versus Spy, they did First Star Software, that was. And they did actually supply source code. But most of the time, I couldn't work that way.